The hegemony's grand strategy chamber hummed with the kind of nervous energy that preceded either glorious victory or spectacular miscalculation. Dr. Vexai Thornwick adjusted her crystalline neural interface and wondered, not for the first time, why civilizations always built their most important rooms to echo dramatically. Perhaps intimidation was universal, or perhaps architects across the galaxy simply lacked imagination. "Xenopsychologist Thornwick," rumbled High Command Admiral Zenthkar, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence like a biological semaphore, "your reputation for understanding primitive species precedes you." Thornwick suppressed the urge to point out that any species capable of interstellar travel probably wasn't primitive, but rank had its privileges and stupidity was apparently one of them. "Admiral, you mentioned captured data requiring analysis." The chamber's holographic display flickered to life, revealing fragments of what appeared to be human communication networks. Text scrolled past in the peculiar linear script these bipedal mammals used, accompanied by audio clips in their guttural linguistic patterns. "The humans call this the Internet," interjected Strategic Coordinator Quilimix, her serpentine form coiled around a data nexus. "Preliminary scans suggest it contains their entire cultural database. Entertainment, communication, technical specifications, everything." Thornwick leaned forward, her compound eyes analyzing the data streams. Within moments, something felt fundamentally wrong. The humans were discussing what they termed mythology, with the same mathematical precision her own people reserved for quantum field theory. "Listen to this," she said, isolating an audio fragment. A human voice emerged from the speakers, casual and conversational. "So, if you're building a Dragon Tipu aerospace vehicle, you need to consider the fire-breathing mechanism as a plasma projection system. The medieval texts actually specify the optimal throat geometry for maximum thrust efficiency." The War Council exchanged glances. Admiral Zenthkar's main eye stalks swiveled dismissively. "Primitive fantasy role-playing. Their species appears to engage in elaborate pretend scenarios involving mythical creatures." "Wait." Thornwick's claws clicked against the data interface as she pulled up more fragments. "Here's another one. The reason Excalibur could only be drawn by Arthur wasn't mystical. It was biometric security. The stone was obviously a weapons locker. With DNA authentication, the whole Camelot network was basically a command structure for coordinated defense operations." Fleet Commander Yithseg, whose gaseous form shifted between colors to indicate mood, turned a particularly skeptical shade of purple. "Doctor, surely you're not suggesting these creatures have disguised technical manuals as children's stories?" Thornwick's mandibles clicked, the equivalent of a human raising an eyebrow. "I'm suggesting we need to examine this more carefully. Look at the pattern distribution." She gestured to the holographic display, highlighting communication nodes across the human data network. "These discussions aren't random entertainment. They're happening in forums dedicated to mythology analysis, folklore engineering, and narrative archaeology." "Archaeology of narratives?" Admiral Zenthkar's second set of eyes focused on the display. What could that possibly mean? "Maybe they're studying their own cultural evolution," suggested tactical analyst Rendoth, his metallic voice carrying undertones of uncertainty. "Some species use historical analysis for strategic planning." Thornwick pulled up another data cluster. "Here's what troubles me. Every human mythological system contains detailed specifications for warfare, engineering, and social organization. The Norse legends describe hammer-wielding gods, but the technical descriptions of Mjolnir match theoretical specifications for kinetic weapons platforms. Greek mythology outlines the Trojan horse, which is essentially a manual for infiltration tactics. Strategic Coordinator Quilimix scales rippled with amusement. Doctor, you're reading far too much into primitive storytelling. Next you'll be telling us their fairy tales contain military doctrine. Actually, Thornwick isolated another audio fragment, a different human voice, equally casual. Little Red Riding Hood is obviously a counterintelligence operation. The girl is a courier, the wolf is enemy surveillance, and the grandmother's house is a safe house. The woodsman arriving at the perfect moment? That extraction protocol. The chamber fell silent except for the omnipresent hum of the ventilation systems. Finally, Admiral Zenthkar's primary voice box crackled to life. Even if we accept your theory, Doctor, what practical significance could it have? These are stories, not weapons. Thornwick's compound eyes refocused on the data streams, watching patterns emerge that made her neural interface temperature spike. Admiral, what if stories are their weapons? What if everything we're seeing, their entire cultural transmission system, is actually the most sophisticated information warfare platform ever developed? Fleet Commander Yithseg cycled through several shades of amber before responding. You're suggesting that human mythology is what? Camouflaged technology? I'm suggesting that maybe we should ask ourselves why a species that can encode quantum mechanics in children's songs has been so easy to locate and track. Thornwick's claws moved across the interface, pulling up star charts showing the human solar system. They broadcast everything, their location, their capabilities, their cultural patterns. For a species facing potential alien contact, that's either remarkably naive or remarkably confident. Tactical analyst Rendarth's optical sensors whirred as they processed the implications. Confidence based on what? Our intelligence suggests they have barely achieved sustainable fusion and rudimentary space travel. Intelligence suggests, Thornwick repeated slowly, based on what they've chosen to let us see. She turned to face the War Council directly. Gentlemen, what if we're not analyzing their data? What if their data is analyzing us? The question hung in the chamber's recycled atmosphere like a toxic cloud. Admiral Zenthkar's eye stalks retracted slightly. Doctor, you're venturing into conspiracy territory. Our scanning technology is the most advanced in the hegemony. We would detect any sophisticated surveillance or counter-intelligence operations. Would we? Thornwick's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of agitation her colleagues had learned to recognize. How would we detect intelligence gathering disguised as entertainment? How would we identify strategic planning camouflaged as storytelling? If they've encoded their entire technological base in cultural narratives, what else might be hidden in plain sight? Strategic Coordinator Quilimix uncoiled from her data nexus, her serpentine form moving with sudden tension. You're suggesting the humans anticipated first contact and prepared accordingly? I'm suggesting that maybe the humans have been preparing for us specifically. Thornwick's voice carried a note of growing unease. Every mythological system on their planet includes detailed scenarios for encountering and defeating superior forces, gods, monsters, demons, dragons, all described with tactical precision and technological specification. Fleet Commander Yithseg had turned a deep, troubled blue. Even if your analysis is correct, we've already committed to the invasion timeline. The fleet reaches Earth's outer system in 72 standard hours. Admiral Zenthkar's 4 eyes focused on Thornwick with uncomfortable intensity. Doctor, you have 48 hours to provide a comprehensive psychological profile of human strategic capabilities. Use whatever resources you require, but I need actionable intelligence, not theoretical paranoia. As the War Council dispersed, Thornwick remained in the Grand Strategy Chamber, surrounded by streams of human data that seemed to pulse with hidden meaning. Somewhere in the chaos of mythology, folklore and fairy tales, she suspected, lay the blueprint for humanity's true capabilities. She just hoped she could decode it before the fleet discovered exactly how much the humans already knew about them. Thornwick's private laboratory existed in a state of controlled chaos that would have horrified her superiors. Data crystals floated in suspension fields, cross-referencing human cultural patterns with mathematical precision that made her ocular processors ache. 47 hours until the Admiral expected her report, and 31 hours until the fleet's weapons reached optimal firing range. The breakthrough came while analyzing human children's literature. Computer, display correlation matrix between human, Three Little Pigs, narrative structure, and defensive engineering protocols. The holographic display materialized, showing structural schematics that made Thornwick's exoskeleton tingle with recognition. Straw house, minimal resource expenditure, designed to fail predictably. Stick house, intermediate defense, calculated to delay rather than prevent. Brick house, maximum resource investment with geometric design principles that matched hegemony siege resistance theory. Regressive defensive layering, she whispered to herself. They're teaching tactical retreat and resource allocation to offspring barely capable of speech. Her communication panel chimed. Research assistant Kethlar's image appeared, his beetle-like features animated with excitement. "Doctor, you need to see what I found in their entertainment archives. They have something called superhero narratives." Explain. Criminal beings with extraordinary capabilities fighting threats to their civilization. But the technical specifications aren't fictional at all. Kethlar's antennae twitched rapidly. This Superman character? His described abilities match theoretical performance parameters for genetically enhanced infantry. Batman uses technology and strategic planning that correlates perfectly with special operations doctrine. Thornwick's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. Send me everything. And Kethlar? Cross-affiliation those narratives with hegemony tactical databases. Look for defensive strategies that specifically counter our standard invasion protocols. While her assistant compiled the data, Thornwick dove deeper into human linguistic patterns. Their languages contained embedded mathematical relationships that shouldn't exist in organic communication systems. Rhyme schemes that matched encryption algorithms. Meta patterns that resembled data compression protocols. "Doctor?" Kethlar's voice carried an edge of concern. "The superhero analysis is complete. Every major narrative contains countermeasures for invasion scenarios remarkably similar to our current operational parameters." The data appeared on her displays and Thornwick felt her core temperature drop. Human Spider-Man fought opponents with advanced technology and superior numbers, using mobility and environmental awareness. Wonder Woman deflected energy weapons and employed psychological warfare against technologically superior enemies. Iron Man represented industrial capability, rapidly adapting to counter specific threats. "They're not entertainment," she realized aloud. "They're training scenarios." Her secure communication system activated unexpectedly. Admiral Zenthkar's image materialized, his eye stalks vibrating with agitation. "Doctor, we've encountered a problem. Long-range sensors are detecting unusual energy signatures from the human system." "What kind of signatures?" "Unknown. Something our databases can't classify. The Fleet Intelligence Division believes they're primitive defensive measures, but..." The Admiral's main eyes focused on something off-screen. "They're geometrically complex, in ways that suggest sophisticated engineering." Thornwick's claws moved across her interface, calling up real-time sensor data from the advancing fleet. The energy patterns emerging from Earth's solar system defied conventional analysis, but when she overlaid them with human mythological references, correlations emerged like constellations. "Admiral, those aren't defensive measures. They're invitation protocols." Explain that. Human mythology is filled with stories about beings who issue challenges to visitors, tests of worthiness, trials of strength, riddles that must be solved before passage is granted. Her voice gained urgency as the patterns became clearer. What if they're not trying to hide from us? What if they're evaluating us? Zenthkar's secondary eyes narrowed. Doctor, you're suggesting the humans are interviewing us for invasion? I'm suggesting they've turned First Contact into a performance review. Thornwick's display showed overlapping data streams, fleet positioning, energy signature analysis, and human cultural references to divine judgment. Every approach vector we've chosen matches scenarios from their religious and mythological texts. They know exactly where we're coming from and how we operate. The communication channel crackled with interference as another voice joined the conversation. Strategic Coordinator Kilmix appeared on a secondary display, her scales rippling with obvious stress. Doctor, we're receiving transmissions from Earth, not distress calls or surrender offers. They're broadcasting stories. What kind of stories? Mythological narratives about visitors from the stars. Gods and demons descending from the heavens to test mortal civilizations. But they're not random selections. Quilmix's coils tightened around her control interface. Each story matches our fleet composition perfectly. They're broadcasting tales about four-eyed skylords, serpentine wisdom keepers, and gaseous beings of judgment. Thornwick felt her neural interface overheating as the implications cascaded through her consciousness. They're not just evaluating us, they've already profiled us. Every species in our fleet, every command structure, every tactical doctrine, it's all represented in their cultural database. Admiral Zenthkar's voice carried a note of forced authority. Even if your analysis is correct, Doctor, we maintain overwhelming technological superiority. Their cultural sophistication cannot overcome basic physics. Can't it? Thornwick called up technical specifications from human fantasy literature. Their descriptions of magic systems contain mathematical frameworks that suggest mastery of exotic physics we classify as theoretical. Teleportation spells describe quantum tunneling with precision that matches our most advanced research. Necromancy appears to be consciousness transfer technology. The silence that followed stretched longer than the gaps between star systems. Finally, Fleet Commander Yithzeg's gaseous form materialized on the communication array, cycling through colors that indicated profound confusion. Doctor, are you suggesting that human magic is actually advanced science disguised as cultural narrative? I'm suggesting that maybe we should ask ourselves why they're broadcasting welcoming stories about star visitors while simultaneously demonstrating detailed knowledge of technologies we thought were exclusive to hegemony science. Thornwick's compound eyes tracked data streams showing the approaching fleet's position relative to Earth's outer planetary defenses. What if this isn't an invasion? What if it's an examination, and we're the ones being tested? Admiral Zenthkar's image flickered as his ship's systems registered proximity alerts. Regardless of human intentions, we maintain our operational timeline. Weapons range in 29 hours. As the communication ended, Thornwick stared at her displays, showing human cultural data flowing like rivers of encoded intelligence. Somewhere in those streams lay the answer to a question that terrified her. If humans had been preparing for this encounter for millennia, what exactly did they expect to accomplish? Her interface chimed with an incoming priority message. The source code indicated it originated from Earth's communication networks. The message contained a single line of text in perfect hegemony standard script. We've been waiting for you to find us, ready when you are. 26 hours later, Thornwick watched the universe rearrange itself, according to principles that had been hiding in human bedtime stories. The hegemony fleet had dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system, weapons charged and tactical formations optimized for rapid planetary subjugation. What they found instead was a reception committee that had been preparing for centuries. "All units report." Admiral Zenthakar's voice crackled across the command frequencies, but his usual authority had developed hairline cracks. "Sensor arrays are detecting massive energy buildups throughout the system." Thornwick monitored the fleet communications from her laboratory, cross-referencing real-time tactical data with human mythological sources. The correlation was becoming impossible to ignore. Jupiter's orbital position matched the classical placement of Zeus in human pantheon hierarchies. Saturn's rings were generating interference patterns that resembled the geometric designs from Norse runestone inscriptions. "Doctor," Kessler's voice interrupted her analysis. "The humans are broadcasting again. Multiple frequencies, synchronized planetary transmission. Put it through." The voice that emerged from her speakers was distinctly human, warm, conversational, completely unimpressed by the massive alien warfleet currently targeting their homeworld. "Greetings to the Hegemony expedition. Please maintain current positions while we complete system initialization. Estimated time to full activation 18 minutes. Fleet Commander Yethseg's panic transmission overlaid the human broadcast. "Unknown defensive platforms are emerging from planetary surfaces. Energy signatures are off our measurement scales." Thornwick called up tactical displays and felt her exoskeleton lock with recognition. The defensive platforms weren't emerging from Earth, they were Earth. Or rather, they were structures so integrated with the planet's geology that they appeared to be natural formations until activated. Exactly like the human legend of the sleeping giant, where mountains themselves awakened to defend the land. "Doctor," Admiral Zenthakar's image appeared on her emergency communication array, his 4 eyes cycling through panic sequences. "We need your xenopsychological assessment immediately. The humans are... they're not behaving according to any invasion response protocol." Through her laboratory's observation windows, Thornwick could see the distant glow of the human star system as massive engineering projects came online. "Admiral, what exactly are they doing?" "They're rearranging their solar system." The Admiral's voice carried a note of hysteria that Thornwick had never heard from a Hegemony command officer. "Planetary orbits are shifting. Asteroid fields are forming geometric patterns. Their star's energy output is being redirected somehow." Thornwick's research databases provided the answer before her conscious mind could process it. "They're implementing the Forge of the Gods scenario from Norse mythology, the cosmic smithy where divine weapons are created." Her claws moved across data interfaces with desperate speed. "Admiral, you need to understand. What you're seeing isn't a defensive measure, it's a demonstration." The human broadcast continued with the same conversational tone. "To our Hegemony visitors, we appreciate your patience during this calibration process. For context, we've been preparing for this meeting since approximately 3000 BCE, when our astronomical calculations first indicated your civilization's expansion trajectory would eventually reach our system." Strategic Coordinator Quilimic's emergency transmission cut through the human broadcast. "Doctor, they're not just rearranging the system, they're building something. Mass sensors indicate construction activities on a scale that should be impossible for their technological level." Thornwick accessed the fleet's external sensors and immediately understood why her colleagues were panicking. The humans weren't just moving planets. They were assembling them into configurations that matched blueprints from their creation mythology. The cosmic construction project unfolding before the Hegemony fleet represented engineering capabilities that shouldn't exist outside of theoretical xenoarchaeology textbook. "Computer," overlay current human system configuration with mythological references from their cultural database. The resulting display made her compound eyes dilate involuntarily. Every planetary position, every asteroid formation, every energy flow pattern matched specifications from human legends about the creation of the universe. They weren't improvising, they were following a blueprint that had been encoded in stories for millennia. The human broadcast resumed. Some of you may be wondering about our capabilities. We thought a practical demonstration would be more efficient than theoretical discussions. Please observe. What happened next would later be classified by Hegemony High Command as the impossible event and buried in archives that officially didn't exist. The humans took their moon, their natural satellite, and transformed it into something that human mythology had called a Death Star, but which hegemony physicists recognized as a stellar mass energy projection platform. Impossible? Fleet Commander Yithseg's gaseous form had turned colors that didn't have names in any known spectrum. Matter conversion on that scale requires industrial infrastructure spanning multiple star systems. Thornwick's mandibles clicked with grim understanding. Not if you've been preparing for 5,000 years and encoding your preparation methods in cultural transmission systems that your enemies would dismiss as primitive storytelling. The tactical situation was deteriorating faster than hegemony command protocols could adapt. Ships designed for planetary bombardment found themselves outgunned by infrastructure that had materialized from what their sensors had classified as uninhabited rock formations. The humans had turned their entire star system into a weapons platform, while maintaining the illusion of a barely spacefaring civilization. Admiral Zenthkar's voice carried the weight of impending career termination. "Doctor, how is this possible? Our intelligence indicated they had achieved fusion power approximately 50 years ago." "They let us see what they wanted us to see," Thornwick replied, her voice carrying notes of professional admiration mixed with existential dread. "Every broadcast, every signal, every piece of data we collected was carefully curated to support the narrative they wanted us to believe." The human transmission continued with infuriating casualness. "We know you're probably confused right now, don't worry. That's normal. Most civilizations find the transition period between invasion and negotiation to be somewhat disorienting." Kethlaw's research station chimed with urgent alerts. "Doctor, I've been analyzing their real-time communications during this event. They're not speaking in crisis protocols or military terminology. They're using the same linguistic patterns as their mythological narratives." Thornwick felt the last pieces of the puzzle clicking into place with mechanical precision. They're not just implementing their mythology. They are their mythology. Every story, every legend, every fairy tale was actual historical documentation of capabilities they've possessed all along. The fleet's external sensors registered new activity as human ships began emerging from what had appeared to be empty space. Not crude metal constructs, but vessels that looked exactly like the divine chariots and cosmic vehicles described in their religious texts. Craft that moved according to principles that made hegemony physicists question the fundamental constants of reality. Admiral Zenthkar's final transmission, before communication arrays failed entirely, carried a tone of defeated comprehension. "Doctor, I believe we may have made a significant tactical error." As hegemony ships found themselves surrounded by technology that had been hiding behind the mask of mythology, Thornwick realized that the greatest strategic deception in galactic history had just revealed itself. The humans hadn't been preparing for invasion, they had been preparing for graduation. 6 hours after the hegemony fleet surrendered unconditionally to what their sensors insisted was still a primitive civilization, Dr. Vexile Thornwick sat in a human-Jesuit conference room that defied several laws of physics she'd previously considered non-negotiable. The walls showed real-time views of space, where the most powerful military force in known galactic history was being efficiently disarmed by beings who accomplished interstellar engineering while discussing lunch plans. Thornwick's compound eyes tracked the casual precision with which humans dismantled weapon systems that had conquered 17 star systems. "Coffee?" The human delegate, who had introduced herself only as Professor, poured a dark liquid from a container that appeared to be constructed from crystallized space-time. "I know your species processes caffeine differently than we do, but we've made some adjustments." Thornwick accepted the cup, noting that the liquid's molecular structure had been modified for her specific physiology, information the humans shouldn't possess unless they'd been studying hegemony biology for decades. "How long have you been watching us?" "Officially? First contact occurred 6 hours ago." The professor's smile contained implications that made Thornwick's exoskeleton itch. "Unofficially? We've been tracking your civilization's development since you achieved spaceflight roughly 800 years ago." The conference room's display activated, showing star charts that depicted hegemony expansion patterns with mathematical precision no external observer should possess. Every conquered world, every strategic decision, every technological advancement was documented with the thoroughness of species that had been conducting a longitudinal study. "The Jester and the King," Thornwick said, suddenly recognizing the pattern. "That's what this is. Human folklore about the wise fool who teaches lessons to those in power through elaborate performances." "Very good." The professor's tone carried the warmth of an instructor acknowledging a particularly bright student, though I prefer to think of it as applied xenopsychology on a civilizational scale. Kethlar's voice emerged from Thornwick's personal communicator. "Doctor, are you all right? The fleet's been trying to reach you for hours." "I'm fine, Kethlar. Better than fine, actually. I'm learning." Thornwick looked directly at the professor. "This entire scenario, the invasion, the discovery, the demonstration, it was orchestrated specifically for us, wasn't it?" "For the hegemony collective, yes, though each species required different approaches." The professor activated a holographic display showing psychological profiles of every alien race in the defeated fleet. "Your people, for instance, respond well to intellectual puzzles and professional challenges. Admiral Zenthkar's species requires demonstrations of superior force. Strategic coordinator Kilmix needed to see systemic elegance before accepting new paradigms." The profiles were devastatingly accurate, displaying cultural analysis that represented centuries of careful observation. Thornwick realized that every interaction between their civilizations had been guided by human understanding of hegemony psychology that exceeded the hegemony's understanding of itself. "The stories you broadcast," Thornell continued, "they weren't just encoded technology. They were psychological profiles. Every mythological creature corresponded to a specific alien species you expected to encounter. Dragons for the Zenthkar Admiralty, yes. Serpents of wisdom for the Kelim Diplomatic Corps. Gaseous entities of judgment for the Yithsag command structure. The professor's casual recitation of classified hegemony organizational intelligence sent chills through Thornwick's neural pathways. "We found that beings tend to reveal their true nature when confronted with archetypal representations of themselves." Thornwick's mind raced through implications that restructured her understanding of galactic civilization. "You've been doing this to other species, haven't you? The entire expansion period, every primitive world the hegemony has conquered, is exactly as primitive as we needed them to appear," the professor finished. "Some civilizations require different lessons than others. The hegemony needed to learn that technological supremacy doesn't guarantee strategic superiority. The conference room's displays showed current status reports from across the former hegemony territories. Instead of chaos following the fleet's defeat, the reports showed curious stability. Trade networks functioning normally, technological exchange proceeding smoothly, diplomatic communications maintaining standard protocols. "Your subject worlds aren't in rebellion," Thornwick observed. "They're continuing normal operations." "Why would they rebel? Most of them have been in communication with us for decades. The hegemony conquest model was useful for a time, but galactic civilization has outgrown it." The professor's tone carried the patience of someone explaining obvious facts to a confused child. "We've been facilitating that transition through various cultural intervention programs." Thornwick felt reality reorganizing itself around principles she'd never considered. The uprisings on Kepler 442b, the technological renaissance on Proxima Centauri, the philosophical revolution in the Vega system, all went exactly according to their respective cultural development plans, yes. Turns out that beings prefer evolution to conquest when given appropriate guidance. The professor paused to sip her coffee. The hegemony model was becoming an impediment to natural galactic development. "So you removed it." Thornwick's voice carried notes of professional admiration. "An entire military empire, defeated through strategic deception disguised as cultural mythology." "The empire wasn't defeated, Doctor. It was promoted." The professor activated a new display showing organizational charts that made Thornwick's vision blur. "The hegemony's administrative efficiency and technological integration capabilities are exactly what galactic civilization needs for its next developmental phase. You'll just be implementing those capabilities under new management." Through the conference room's impossible windows, Thornwick watched human engineering crews working alongside hegemony technical specialists to retrofit fleet vessels with technology that violated everything she'd believed about the limits of physics. The collaboration appeared seamless, as if both groups had been training for this moment. "The final irony," Thornwick said slowly, "is that we never invaded you at all, did we? You invited us here to receive new assignments." And the professor's smile widened. "Welcome to the real galactic community, Doctor. Population, everyone who's ready for it. Your next briefing begins in 20 minutes, and I think you'll find the work much more interesting than conquest." As Thornwick prepared for her new career as a xenopsychologist in humanity's galactic development program, she reflected on the elegant symmetry of their situation. The species that had spent millennia encoding wisdom in stories had just demonstrated the most sophisticated example of narrative warfare in known history. The humans had won not by being stronger, but by being better storytellers. In the end, that turned out to be the only advantage that mattered.